All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack one of the internet's most fiercely debated relationship dilemmas. Honestly, it's a topic that has sparked countless arguments, ruined a fair share of relationships, and, well, been the central plot of virtually every romantic comedy out there. We're going to be looking at the fascinating intersection of human biology, psychology, and modern dating.
So, can men and women actually be friends? I mean, we all know that classic trope of the friend you shouldn't worry about. You know the exact scenario, your partner has a friend they swear is strictly platonic, but then, literally a few months after your breakup, they're suddenly in a relationship together. It happens so often that it leaves us wondering if cross-sex friendships are basically just romantic waiting rooms. Well, today we're going to decode the psychology and the biology of platonic relationships to find the real truth behind this whole phenomenon.
Section 1. The Great Friendship Debate.
So, the core thesis here, it's that yes, men and women can absolutely be friends. But, and this is a big but, it requires a very specific skill set that, quite frankly, a lot of us just weren't taught growing up. You see, people who actually navigate cross-sex friendships well usually have internal templates for these critical boundary-setting skills, and they often pick these up in childhood. Like, if you grew up seeing your parents maintain really healthy close friendships with the opposite sex, you probably internalized those subtle boundaries, like managing physical touch or knowing how to communicate properly. But if you don't have those skills, well, things like setting clear relationship boundaries, having honest but non-confessional conversations about your feelings, and actively choosing not to act on every single passing impulse of lust, that can all feel incredibly unnatural.
Section 2. Mastering Emotional Regulation.
Now, the absolute biggest hurdle in any platonic friendship is the fear of catching feelings, right? But consider the stark contrast between the initial, completely chaotic spark of dopamine love and the long-term bonding nature of oxytocin love. When you first catch feelings, your brain is just flooded with dopamine. Just brushing arms or even being in the same room feels like electricity. But those intense initial feelings, they usually equilibrate and fade. If you look at marriages of 20 or 30 years, that initial dopamine high doesn't just stick around forever. It has to be replaced by oxytocin, which is a much deeper bonding love. And what this means is that if you catch feelings for a friend, that chemical rush will actually naturally putter out if you don't actively invest in feeding it. Love and attraction are just emotions, and just like anger or sadness, they can actually be regulated and managed over time.
Okay, so what if you do catch feelings? Well, you don't actually have to flee the friendship. Instead, you can actively alter how you spend your time together to intentionally foster a platonic energy. You regulate those romantic impulses, you grab lunch instead of dinner, you keep a cap on the drinks to keep your inhibitions intact, and you dilute that intense one-on-one energy by bringing your partners or maybe your kids along to hang out. I mean, let's be real, absolutely nothing kills a brewing romantic vibe quite like a toddler throwing French fries across the table. You're basically intentionally choosing not to engage in behaviors that foster the growth of that attraction. And get this, despite what literally every movie tells us, the vast majority of people do not actually want to deal with the complication of attraction in their friendships. In fact, 32%, that is 5 times as many people, view physical attraction to a platonic friend as a cost or a burden to the relationship, rather than an advantage. Only a tiny 6% actually see it as a benefit. At the end of the day, people generally just want their friendships to be friendships.
Section 3. The Friends to Lovers Pipeline.
So while we can successfully regulate those emotions, we really can't ignore the immense volume of romantic relationships that emerge directly out of the friend zone. Are you ready for this? A staggering 70.3% of romantic relationships organically start out as friendships. And this isn't even counting the modern swipe culture of dating apps. When we look at how couples actually form out in the real world, over 2/3 of the time, they were friends first.
Furthermore, to put that into perspective, these couples are friends for an average of nearly 2 years, almost 22 months to be exact, before they ever even start dating, which honestly entirely validates any suspicions you might have about the friend zone. If you are ever worried about your partner's long-term best friend, well, the data absolutely tracks with why that intuition exists. The friends to lovers pathway is statistically the most common way humans enter into romantic relationships.
So why is this pathway just so overwhelmingly popular? Because let's be real, modern dating feels like a rigorous job interview that just instantly kills any romantic spark. Think about it. When you go on a first date, you're trying to figure out if they share your values, what their finances look like, their ambition, their views on having kids, religion, all while trying to somehow force chemistry. It is completely exhausting. But friends, they already deeply know each other's values. They've seen how the other person treated their ex. They know for a fact they're trustworthy, and they already have this great baseline connection. The safety is already there. So why do the signals get so easily crossed in the first place?
Section 4. The Biology of Attraction. To really understand this, we need to talk about error management theory. This is a biological concept suggesting that organisms make predictable cognitive errors to minimize the cost of worst-case survival scenarios. Now, quick disclaimer here. Human psychology is obviously highly individual. We aren't just simple animals driven entirely by instinct. We have super complex minds shaped by trauma, media, and our childhoods. But error management theory really helps explain the overarching population trends of how we fundamentally misread romantic signals across genders.
So, biologically speaking, men tend to overinflate a woman's interest while women consistently underestimate it, which creates this absolute perfect storm for mismatched expectations. For an ancestral male, the worst-case scenario is missing a rare chance to pass on his genes, right? So his brain mathematically amplifies her signals. He naturally assumes she's into him even if she's just being friendly. But for an ancestral female, a false positive, like believing a man is committed when he actually isn't, well, that could leave her as a solo mother, which back then was a massive survival risk. So her biological strategy is to drastically underestimate his interest, essentially forcing him to loudly, undeniably prove his commitment. You put these two biological trends together, and you get male friends constantly overestimating attraction and female friends constantly underestimating it.
Section 5. Escaping the friend zone.
All right, so how do you actually cross that bridge from friend to romantic partner? Well, most people handle it the entirely wrong way. The wrong way is over-investing emotionally and financially to try to essentially buy affection. You know the drill. You think if you just pick them up from the airport enough times, buy them enough coffees, and listen to all their problems, they're going to magically realize they love you. But that doesn't actually change your baseline attractiveness. The right way involves investing in yourself to become universally attractive.
To really transition out of the friend zone, you have to shift your focus toward leveling up your own life, because the other person has to inherently view you as dateable from the get-go. If they don't share your humor, or if they're completely turned off by your lack of ambition, doing them endless favors is not going to change their mind. You need to focus on becoming dateable. Hit the gym. Develop some genuine career ambition. Do a little looks maxing by upgrading your fashion. Clean your apartment, and yes, actually wipe down those countertops. You have to check the baseline boxes of a viable romantic partner.
There's a quote that hits the nail on the head here. The right move is not to try to get this person to like you, but to try to become something that people find attractive. Because when you combine the established safety and the deep trust of a long-term friendship with a sudden realization of your undeniable upgraded value, that is exactly what successfully bridges the gap into romance. They already know they can trust you. Now they're biologically driven to desire you.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to look at your own life and ask yourself a slightly uncomfortable question. Who are you keeping in your friend zone, and who is keeping you in theirs? Are you navigating your cross-sex friendships with clear boundaries and emotional skill, or are you just sort of waiting in line hoping your dopamine translates into a relationship without putting in the work to become undeniably dateable? It is entirely possible to just be friends, but if you truly want more, you can't just wait in the wings. You have the science now. It's completely up to you to apply the skill.